Ever scroll through your phone, like just for a minute, and then boom, 2 hours are gone?
Yeah.
It's like falling into some kind of Instagram black hole where time just vanishes.
Yeah.
Happens to everyone, right?
It does.
But it is a little scary when you start to think about how much time we're actually losing to social media
Right.
and all the stuff we could be doing instead.
Absolutely. The average person spends over 2 hours a day on social media,
Wow.
which adds up to over 30 days a year.
A whole month.
But even more interesting is the neuroscience behind why we get so hooked.
Okay.
Basically, our brains are wired to look for rewards, and social media platforms are really good at using that.
Ew.
With every scroll and every notification.
So it's not really our fault.
Why?
Our brains are kind of working against us.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
Each interaction on social media triggers a hit of dopamine,
Dopamine.
the feel-good chemical that basically tells your brain, hey, do that again.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, it makes us want to keep scrolling and keep liking and keep checking.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's similar to what happens with things like gambling or even junk food.
Oh, interesting.
You know, you get that little reward and your brain's like, more please.
So we're fighting a pretty powerful urge then.
We are.
But luckily we've got some help today. We're diving into a YouTube video that outlines 5 powerful strategies for breaking free from this social media trap.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, awesome.
The first strategy is all about understanding this addiction loop we've been discussing. If we can figure out how these platforms are designed to keep us hooked, then we can start to take back control.
That's a good point. Awareness is key, right?
It is.
But how do we put that into practice? The video talks about setting clear boundaries, which sounds good in theory, but how do we actually do that?
It's a lot like creating a budget, but for your time and attention.
Okay.
You know, just like we allocate money for different expenses.
Right.
We need to decide how much time we're willing to spend on social media and then use different tools to help us stick to that.
So things like app timers and limits.
Exactly. Those can be super effective, but it's also about setting boundaries with ourselves and the people around us.
Okay.
Like maybe you decide that you're not going to check social media during meals.
Right.
Or for an hour before bed.
That makes sense. But what about when you're bored
Yeah.
and you just want something to do? Like, is it really realistic to expect people to just sit there and stare at the wall?
Well,
The video actually mentions this and
Yeah.
talks about replacing mindless scrolling habits with more mindful ones.
exactly. It's not just about being on your phone less.
Okay.
It's about filling that time with things that are good for you. Whether it's reading or spending time in nature or hanging out with people you care about.
Right.
Or pursuing a hobby.
So instead of grabbing your phone every time you have a free minute,
Yeah.
we should be choosing how we want to spend that time.
Precisely. Think about it like this. Every time you reach for your phone, you're making a choice. Are you choosing to invest your time in something that matters to you?
Right.
Or are you choosing to let some algorithm decide how you spend your time and energy?
Whoa.
It's a powerful way to think about it.
It really is. Like, we're giving away our control every time we mindlessly scroll.
We could say that.
But the good news is we can get that back
Mm-hmm.
by making smarter choices.
By being intentional. And that actually leads us to the next strategy, which is curating our feeds.
Okay, I've heard this before,
Yeah.
but it's definitely easier said than done.
It can be.
How do we make our social media feeds work for us instead of against us?
It all starts with being really picky about who and what you follow.
Okay.
Imagine your social media feed is like a buffet.
Okay.
Are you filling your plate with junk food that makes you feel gross and unsatisfied? Or are you choosing nutritious foods that fuel your mind and spirit?
Okay, so we've talked about setting boundaries and choosing what we see online.
Right.
But what about taking a break altogether?
Yeah.
The video mentioned something called a digital detox. And honestly, the idea kind of scares me, but it's also interesting.
I get that. The idea of disconnecting can feel pretty overwhelming,
Yeah.
especially these days when we're so connected all the time. But a digital detox doesn't mean you have to become some kind of technophobe.
Okay.
It's more about giving yourself some space,
Right.
taking back your time and attention, and rediscovering the joys of being unplugged.
I like that way of putting it. Creating space instead of depriving yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. But how do you actually do a digital detox? Does it mean going completely off the grid, or are there different ways to do it?
There are definitely different approaches.
Okay.
Some people go all in and disconnect from everything for a certain amount of time. Others prefer to focus on specific apps or activities.
So like I could avoid social media for a weekend, but still use my phone for calls and stuff.
Exactly. The key is to find what works for you in your life. There's no right or wrong way.
Yeah. And starting small is probably a good idea, right?
It is. If you've never done a digital detox before, don't try to go cold turkey for a week.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Start with something manageable, like an hour before bed
Right.
or a weekend afternoon.
I can do that. What are the benefits, though? Is it just about reducing screen time, or is there something more going on?
It's definitely more than just cutting down on screen time.
Okay.
Research shows that digital detoxes can have a bunch of positive effects
Like what?
on both our mental and physical health.
Okay.
They can help you sleep better,
Oh, wow.
reduce stress and anxiety,
Really?
increase focus and concentration, and even boost creativity.
Wow. It's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
It is.
But I imagine there are challenges, too. What about that feeling of FOMO? The fear of missing out. That could be pretty strong.
Oh, FOMO is definitely real, and it's something to think about.
Okay.
But I think it's also a chance to examine why we feel the need to be constantly connected in the first place. What are we so afraid of missing?
That's a good question.
Is it really that important, or are we just hooked on that dopamine rush we talked about?
That makes you think, huh. But let's be real.
Yeah.
Disconnecting completely isn't always possible.
Right.
Especially for people with busy jobs or families. So how do we find a balance?
It's all about building healthy habits
Okay.
and setting boundaries that work for you. Maybe you have certain times of day that are device-free zones, like during meals or family time.
Right.
Or maybe you decide to put your phone away an hour before bed so you can sleep better.
I've been trying that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to say, I am sleeping much better. I used to scroll through social media in bed, and I realize now how much that was messing with my sleep.
That's great to hear. It's amazing how even small changes can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And once you start seeing the benefits, it makes it easier to keep going.
It's like you build momentum. The more you disconnect, the less you need to be connected.
Yeah. Exactly. You're breaking free from that constant cycle of checking and scrolling and refreshing.
And taking back control of your time and attention.
Yes.
But it's not just about us as individuals, right?
Right.
The video also mentioned how this constant connectivity affects our relationships and our ability to connect with the world around us.
It's true. When we're always glued to our screens, we miss out on those spontaneous moments.
Yeah.
Those face-to-face interactions that make life so much more meaningful.
Right.
And we're also kind of sending a message to the people around us.
What kind of message?
That our devices are more important than they are. Like we're choosing virtual connection over real connection.
So it's not about FOMO, it's about JOMO.
Joe.
The joy of missing out.
I love that. It's about rediscovering the joy of being present, of experiencing the world around us and connecting with people on a deeper level.
Now that we've talked about the digital detox challenge, I'm curious about the long-term effects of following these strategies consistently. The video mentioned something about unlocking a more focused and disciplined life.
Yes.
What did they mean by that?
It comes down to understanding that our attention is like a muscle.
Okay.
The more we work it out, the stronger it gets. Every time we resist the urge to check our phones, every time we choose to focus on something without getting distracted, we're strengthening our ability to concentrate and stay present.
We've really gone deep, haven't we?
We have.
Exploring the psychology behind social media addiction, practical strategies for setting boundaries, the power of curating our feeds, and the benefits of a digital detox.
Absolutely.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
Uncovering the hidden depths of our relationship with technology.
You could say that.
And like any journey, there's no one-size-fits-all approach, right?
What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. The key is to try things out. Find what works for you and be patient with yourself along the way. But as we wrap up, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from this? If they could only make one change based on what we've talked about, what would it be?
That's a tough one.
It is.
But I think the most important thing is to start paying more attention to how technology makes you feel.
Okay.
Notice how you feel when you're on social media. Are you feeling energized and inspired, or are you feeling drained and kind of empty? Also, pay attention to how your behavior changes when you're on your phone.
Okay.
Are you more easily distracted? Do you get irritable or anxious more easily?
We need to tune in to those little signals our bodies and minds are giving us.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Once you start noticing those signals, You can make more conscious choices about how you use technology.
Right.
And that's where those strategies we discussed come in.
Okay.
Maybe you set a timer to limit your scrolling. Maybe you unsubscribe from those email lists that are clogging up your inbox.
Yeah.
Maybe you put your phone away during meals or family time.
It's about taking back control, isn't it?
It is.
Creating a digital world that supports your well-being instead of taking away from it.
Exactly.
But I think for some people, the hardest part is just getting started.
Yeah.
They might feel overwhelmed by the idea of making big changes and end up doing nothing at all.
Right.
So what would you say to someone who's feeling stuck?
I would say start small. Don't try to change everything at once.
Okay.
Pick one small habit you want to change and focus on that. Maybe it's putting your phone away an hour before bed.
Right.
Maybe it's unfollowing those accounts that aren't doing anything for you anymore.
Okay.
Once you've mastered that one habit, then you can move on to the next.
That's great advice. It's about taking those small steps that eventually lead to big changes.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that this is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
There will be times when you slip up,
Right.
when you fall back into old habits.
It happens.
But that's okay.
It is.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. The important thing is to be kind to yourself,
Yeah.
learn from your mistakes, and keep going.
Well said. If our listeners are feeling inspired to continue this journey, there are so many great resources out there.
There are.
The video we talked about today is a great place to start.
Yeah.
And there are tons of books and articles and podcasts all about helping us navigate the digital age in a mindful and intentional way.
Absolutely.
There's a whole community of people out there
Yeah,
dedicated to creating a healthier and more balanced relationship with technology.
it's true.
So don't be afraid to connect with others and share your experiences.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Yeah.
What if we saw our relationship with technology not as a battle to be won,
Okay.
but as a dance to be choreographed?
I like that.
A dance where we lead,
Yeah.
setting the pace and choosing the steps, instead of being swept away by the rhythm of algorithms and notifications.
It's a beautiful analogy. It's about taking back control and choosing how we want to live our lives.
So let's step onto the dance floor
Yes.
and start creating a digital world that reflects our values, nourishes our souls,
Yeah.
and empowers us to live our best lives.
To a more mindful and meaningful digital future.
Absolutely.